Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Taylor Riggs, Caroline Hyde taking the day off, but not taking the day off. Our Beyond the Bell global simulcast team, Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec, bringing together our Bloomberg Television, Radio, and YouTube audiences. Carol, quite an end to the week here.
Yeah, I think Caroline maybe is taking the day off because she's exhausted because it's been a crazy week. I know. Long weekend. Listen, here we are going to finish near our lows of the day. And if I look for the week overall, guys, Dow and the S&P 500, they're down for the week overall just a little bit. And the NASDAQ just squeezing out a little bit of a gain there, Tim.
Yeah, it's like markets did a lot on some days, but by the end of the week, not much actually happened. If we take a deeper dive into the Bloomberg industry groups, we see kind of a half and half, red and green on the screen. Financials and utilities leading the way with information technology and consumer discretionary rounding out the bottom there.
And we were talking about the NASDAQ and the NASDAQ 100, of course, eking out a gain for the week. It's going to be the first in 5 weeks that we're actually going to post a gain. Don't let this week fool you, Romaine. Before this, you had 4 straight weeks of declines. And so you're wondering if this was a buying opportunity. And then how the heck did the NASDAQ climb back when I thought cryptocurrencies were the story of the week?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a gain of about 0.1%. I hate to throw cold water on that, but you're talking about an index that still tested a lot of those key moving averages, still kind of camped out around that 100-day. So you have to kind of question where's the trend line right now.
Well, what's interesting, too, is crypto, man. That was one of our big stories for the week overall. We just had a headline a few minutes ago about Bitcoin specifically. The decline that we saw in today's session extended to 10%. So continuing, Romaine, to see pressure.
All right. Well, let's check in here on what's happening in the equity markets. We are getting the closing bells on this Friday, a beautiful day here in New York, 41.54 on the S&P 500. That's going to be down about 0.1%. Of course, it's going to take a couple seconds for all this to shake out, so that could change. The NASDAQ composite right now down about 0.5%. That probably won't change. It is down on the day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average looks like it's going to finish higher on the day, up about 0.4%, right around 34,208. And as far as the Russell 2000, I believe the Russell is actually higher on the day by about 0.3%. We should point out both the Dow and the S&P are down on a weekly basis. The NASDAQ, Carol, is higher on a weekly basis.
I love that you said it's a beautiful day because for some of the names, depending whether it was a particular retail company or if you look at the financials for the week overall, they actually, or I should say in the Friday session, did pretty well. So, you know, it's one of those weeks, Taylor, where we saw whether it was jobless claims, whether it was the Fed minutes, whether it was crypto selling off, you had specific things that really determined the market direction.
How much of that came from bond yields? You mentioned the FOMC meeting minutes. What really stands out to me for our radio audience when we're taking a look at the sector level within the S&P 500, it's banks and it's dividends that are the big gainers, up 1.3%. As you've heard a lot about the financials really benefiting from this environment. As we heard on Wednesday, the FOMC finally saying that they might be now thinking about tapering. Everything else is pretty green except for on the bottom of the screen when we look about what is red. You have to say it, Caroline, a lot of this is tech, a lot of this is media. You did see some fallout from that big media merger that we saw on Monday.
Did you call me Caroline? Caroline, I'm going to take that as a no, it's a great compliment.
I'm tired. I'm sorry.
I am tired too. I have a niece who's Caroline. She's named after me, so I love it. Hey, let's talk about some of the gainers here. NVIDIA, I love the chip names. Top in the S&P 500 and a top gainer in the NASDAQ 100. NVIDIA shares jumping after announcing a 4-for-1 stock split. So huge. That stock at its highs up more than 4%, but by the end of the day, up about 2.6%. Ford, it has been on such a run. I know. Which one? Ford, right?
Yeah, Ford is just amazing. I mean, not only that you got the 7% on your screen, up about 12-13% on a weekly basis. This is one of the best weeks we've seen for the company, Carol.
Well, that's what you do when you, introduce an electric F-150. I mean, Romaine, have you put in your order? Because everybody else is putting in their order.
I'm waiting on the Lambo.
It's only $100, I think, to put in the order, actually, to get on that. Refundable, too.
Well, they've had some unbelievable order numbers. So that stock, as you said, quite a run. Boeing, I want to mention, that stock up about 3% here, planning its new 737 MAX output jump in late 2022. That's coming from Reuters. And then Deere, everybody, farmers, they're buying equipment. And it was up about 1.5%. They also lifted their profit outlook. Surging farm sector, Tim.
Oh, you got the gainers, Carol. I got the decliners. Let's start with VF Corp, down nearly 9% on the day today. This coming after fourth quarter earnings and adjusted gross margin that trailed analyst estimates. Applied Materials, we covered those earnings yesterday after the bell. Finishing the day today down just about 1.2%. The stock, though, up more than 49% so far this year. So expectations have certainly been high. Seagate Technology was one of Carol's gainers earlier in the week, higher on crypto news, down today over 3%. It was downgraded to market perform from outperform at Northland. Discovery, Taylor, you mentioned the big media merger news of the weekend. Discovery down about 0.8%.
Imagine that was just 4 days ago,
Yeah,
right?
I know. Four days going on 6 weeks is what it feels like. Finishing the week, though, down in double digits after Monday's news of its tie-up with AT&T.
Biggest news of the week, and they fall for 5 straight days.
Isn't that crazy? What does that mean? What does that tell us about investors?
Well, I know we're going to have a great conversation about that. I know AT&T got a few upgrades days. We further digest that news, but let's first digest where we are on the week for yields. And gosh, do I say it? Is it
You are
hunch? Is
tired.
it 1 basis point?
Is this the same board we had last Friday?
You know, blink and you miss it. It looks
For our
like
radio
the
audiences,
same board.
we're looking at 162, basically 162 basis points on the 10-year yield. If you were tuning in last Friday, it was also at 162 basis points.
And you know what's crazy is we've had pretty much a 160 handle going back since March. I mean, we really haven't done much. Despite, Carol, what was so interesting Wednesday from the FOMC,
Right.
I was so surprised how well behaved these bond markets were, given what in many analyst cases seemed to be a pivot from we're not even thinking about tapering, we're not even thinking about it, to we are thinking about having a discussion soon. And most of the analyst notes, Ellen Zettner of Morgan Stanley being one of them, saying we have now pulled forward our expectation of a taper and then eventually a rate hike.
So juxtapose that against the chart you just showed in terms of bond yields. And Romaine, you talking about we haven't seen much movement. And even with all the volatility in the equity markets this week, you know, by the end of the week, we were little change. And it is interesting against the backdrop of more Fed speakers, Taylor, saying, well, maybe we need to be nimble. We heard that from Romaine Bostick. We're hearing people say maybe the Fed needs to start thinking about, you know, what to do with that balance sheet.
Romaine, you were bringing up a smart conversation between Romaine Bostick. You heard from Kaplan and what seemed to be a change in tone from maybe more diverse members saying some are more hawkish, some are more dovish. Do you get mixed messaging, or is this part
I
of
think
the
the
bigger
fact that they're at least
strategy?
talking about it out loud, I think that seems to be the shift here, right? I mean, you have to assume these conversations have always taken place behind closed doors, but the fact that they feel comfortable now saying this publicly, I think it gives you some sense here. And just to your point too, Carol, though, I mean, what's going to drive the Fed ultimately is going to be really with the economic data. And I think a lot of people talk about how fast is the Fed is going to move. How fast is this economic data going to move? That's what, I mean, if you see that and those inflationary pressures come in, they got to do something.
You're so right. And think about when the weekly jobless claims number came out. It showed a big improvement in terms of claims coming down. I mean, that's what the Fed's going to be watching, right? They're going to be watching the labor market very, very closely when, Tim, all of those millions of jobs that were lost, whether they come back.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how many times we have to hear it from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. That is what the number that they are watching. They want those more than 8 million people to get back to work. And the big question is when and to what extent we see wage inflation associated with that, or to what extent we have to wait until September when schools open up to actually get people back to work.
Yeah, and when we were talking about inflationary pressures, I mean, I want to touch on commodities here because that had sort of been the canary in the coal mine, at least a lot of people thought. The Bloom came off of that rose really last week, and we saw another pullback in the Bloomberg Commodity Index this week here. Oil, of course, kind of in stasis right now as people sort of look and see what happens with Iran. But then, of course, you had the industrial metals kind of pull back, as well as the soft commodities here, Carol. So I'm not sure what that tells us, but at least in the short term, this gives a sense here that maybe it is transitory.
I think, Carol, one thing that really stood out to me was the note from the farmer who said, I've given up on wheat and I'm just going to corn because that's where all the money
Did you
is.
say you've given up on weed? Is that what you said, Taylor?
Wheat.
Oh, okay. Just checking out.
Oh my
I didn't know if
gosh.
there was a new
Carol.
commodity that I hadn't heard
Carol,
about.
this is family friendly.
Carol,
Don't try to
Thinking
get
about
me
the
mad.
weekend.
It has been Friday. It's
Not
been
nice.
It's been
Carol,
a crazy
speaking of that, what are you planning to do this weekend?
What am I going to, I'm going to spend some time. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about dating. Can we talk about dating and the White House? They are like going out to all of the dating apps, and basically you can put on it,
The
Tim.
White
I know
House?
you're off the market, Tim, but you can put out whether or not you've had your vaccine.
You can.
think we're
Look, the
all
White
off the
House. The
market,
White
aren't
House
we?
is working with private companies. They're working with Uber and Lyft to try to get people
just to
to
clarify that.
vaccine appointments and to get them their shots. They are also working with a host of dating apps, so you can get on those apps and you can say, "Hey, I've been vaccinated. You want to hang out?"
Am I going to get in huge trouble for saying this?
Oh my gosh.
Which part?
What did you say?
I mean, instead of doing a vaccine thing, can we just like an STD thing? Like, I don't care if you're vaccinated. I care if you have like huge other
And
issues.
you are like saying me about a family show and weed?
That took a turn.
Romaine has given up.
Romaine's done.
Goodbye, Carol.
Romaine
Goodbye,
is done.
Tim. Have a wonderful weekend.
You guys
Goodbye,
too.
everybody. It's a Friday and it's been a long week. That's going to do it for our cross-platform coverage. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you again on Monday, same time, same place.